Hey, you guys, this is Screeching Squid 3G, and you know the scene and the entourage of how this looks. We are doing another podcast story with a friend, a new friend. Um, would you like to go by a nickname, or should I just call you Elise here with a podcast story, a very spooky story? And she's very interested in this story as well. So she will be joining us on this ride on listening to this podcast story. And it is lore. It is the Forever Experiments. And I might be making this into a two-parter. So this will be first part, and then second part will come soon afterwards. So let us join on this creepy Forever Experience. Ooh.
The Forever Experiments. This story was sent to the podcast from an email address that has since been disabled. Let me get the background stuff out of the way. I used to be a highly regarded person in my field. Then I did a bad thing. A bad thing that would result in me going to jail for a long time.
Everybody's going to jail in stories. Everyone's ending up in jail.
If you're enough at a thing that someone else can profit off of, you'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be okay.
Suddenly, my charges disappeared and I had a new job. A job that required a 12-hour-long psychiatric evaluation using techniques I'd never seen before.
Crazy house.
But a job nonetheless. When you're dragging yourself through the desert, you don't get picky about the brand of water offered to you.
No, Aquafina. Aquafina.
Forever. So I ended up at Omega to Alpha. OA to people who work here.
OA? Okay.
I'm guessing no one's ever heard of it. As I understand it, they started as a consultant firm that worked on reverse engineering before they stumbled across the Forever Experiments. OA found me. They knew what to look for by then. In the end, despite what I know for a fact be a number of red flags, they offered me a job, which was its own red flag. Why would any private sector firm hire a physicist whose track record included highlights of functional alcoholism and negligent homicide while working for the Department of Defense? Because I fit a very specific profile. My desperation was a big part of it. You need to be desperate to do what I do.
Desperate.
Supposedly, they had connections.
Connections?
They could make all my problems go away. So I took the job. In the end, they hired me, and I found myself in a black sedan being driven to a heavily guarded compound in the middle of nowhere, Utah. And that's saying something.
No one likes Utah.
I don't know for sure. It was night. We could have been driving in circles. Through 2 security gates and into a security entrance, past a retina and fingerprint analyzer, and finally into a 10 by 10 room. The room was empty, save for the man standing in the middle of it, in front of 3 doors opposite the door I entered. He looked to be about 40 with a buzzed haircut, a few days of stubble on his jaw that was probably just his style, and a suit that didn't particularly fit him well. The door closed behind me. He introduced himself as Vance, my liaison at OA, and held out his hand. I stepped forward and shook it, looking over his shoulder to the 3 doors. Vance stood there silently for a moment before reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small pack of spearmint gum. His thumb pushed a single stick out of the pack and asked if I wanted some. I immediately became aware of our proximity and the likelihood that he smelled vodka from my morning coffee. I took the stick and nodded my thanks. He put the pack away and told me to step through the door to get started. I looked at him for a moment. He said the words like I was supposed to know what kind of research he wanted me to do. All I had to go on was the assumption that I'd been recruited because of my work with the DoD and the G-Force research I was doing with the Air Force. Then it occurred to me. He said the door, not a door. When I asked him which door, he just grinned softly and said whichever door I'd like. Not knowing what to say, and still mildly afraid that they were going to retract their offer, I walked past Vance and grabbed the handle of the door on the right. I opened it and walked through. What was through the other two doors? Your guess is as good as mine. There was a wall to my immediate left as I opened the door, so whatever was there wasn't for me to know. And I'd never find out. I walked down the hall and Vance followed close behind. A soft click of his shoes on the ground drowning out the soft padding of my sneakers. Vance told me I'd be working with Group 3, and that, as he put it, they're currently working on some pressure testing we know you're familiar with, so you should be able to jump right in. I followed Vance's directions as he guided me through the twists and turns of the sterile white hallway. Occasionally, we passed another man or woman wearing a lab coat, but they never made any motion towards saying hello or even registering we were there. In hindsight, I suppose that's because we're all just ghosts. No, not literally. Just emotionally. Finally, Vance stopped outside of an unmarked door and waved his hand, offering for me to step inside. I turned the knob and entered a surprisingly large room. It had to be, in order to fit a thermal vacuum system space simulator chamber in the middle of it. The name explains it perfectly. A 12 by 22 piece of equipment that simulates the vacuum of space. There are two 35-inch cryo pumps with ball screw activated gate valves. 25,000 LPS designed to achieve an ultimate pressure of 2 times 10 to the minus 7 torr.
I'm not a mechanic. I don't know any of this stuff.
5 torr with
I'm not a mechanic.
TLS inlet.
I'm not an engineer, buddy.
Not some piece of secret machinery.
Oh,
You
secret.
can buy one on the open market if you have about 700K sitting around.
I don't have that kind of money.
I'd used it in the past. Except this had a macabre modification. There was a single steel chair bolted into the middle of the chamber, complete with metal restraints. I noticed it right away. Vance noticed me notice it. He ushered me into the control room to meet the rest of the team. A man and woman stood inside, who I'd later be introduced to as Kate Bretner and Miles O'Rourke. There's no such thing as a senior or lead scientist in a way. Everyone's at the same level and only works towards a solution to the presented problem. And what problem were they working on at that moment?
Yeah, what problem?
Before I could introduce myself, Kate shushed me. She actually shushed me, waving away my hand like I was some kid in school.
Yeah, do your
She tapped the
homework.
button on the
Do your
console and
homework.
said,
Get back to doing your homework.
"Ready for 3. The voice on the other end of the comm said, "Bringing 3. I stood there silently and watched as they brought in a youngish-looking Asian
Ooh, it's so creepy. She has to
25
put
years
on a
old.
big giant blanket.
And when I say brought in, I mean wheeled in on some kind of contraption that looked like a wheelchair, bigger, like it could go off-road. He was wheeled in by another man wearing a white lab coat. When they reached the chamber, he turned the chair around and backed it into the chamber. The wheelchair then connected to the chair in the chamber, and some sort of hydraulic mechanism slid the man, named 3, into the chamber chair and locked him in place. I asked what they were doing, but no one even looked at me except for Vance, who never stopped looking at me.
That's creepy.
As the wheelchair was rolled out of the room, Miles tapped
Just
the
kept
button
on staring at him.
Session number 451, active. Closing chamber door.
Creepy.
I began to move towards the control panel. To what end? I don't know. But Vance's hand was on my shoulder immediately, his grip strong and commanding. I stopped because they knew I would. I watched as the chamber closed with a muffled echo. I watched and stood by as Kate counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2. It's not like you think it is. In the movies, when someone is sucked out into space, they explode or make things more cinematic somehow.
Sucked out in space.
In reality, when the human body is exposed to the vacuum of space, a number of injuries begin to happen immediately. They start out minor enough. The first is the expansion of gases within the lungs and digestive tract due to the reduction of external pressure.
Ouch.
In the case of explosive decompression, a person could increase their chance of survival by exhaling within the first few seconds. Otherwise, death is likely to occur once the lungs rupture and spill bubbles of air into the circulatory system. In the absence of atmospheric pressure, water will spontaneously convert into vapor, which would cause the moisture in a person's mouth and eyes to quickly boil away. The same effect will cause water in the muscles and soft tissues in the body to evaporate, prompting some parts of the body to swell to twice their usual size after a few moments. This bloating may result in some superficial bruising due to broken capillaries, but not enough to split open the skin. Within seconds, the reduced pressure will cause the hydrogen, which is dissolved in the blood, to form gaseous bubbles. Scuba divers call it the bends. After about 10 seconds, a person will experience loss of vision and impaired judgment. And the cooling effect of evaporation will lower the temperature in the person's mouth and nose to near freezing. Unconsciousness and convulsions would follow several seconds later, and a blue discoloration of the skin called cyanosis would become evident. At this point, the person would be floating in a blue, bloated, unresponsive stupor. But their brain would remain undamaged and their heart would continue to beat. If pressurized oxygen is administered within about 1.5 minutes, a person in such a state is likely to make a complete recovery with only minor injuries, though the hypoxia-induced blindness may not pass for some time. Without intervention in those first 90 seconds, the blood pressure would fall sufficiently that the blood itself would begin to boil, and the heart would stop beating. There are no recorded instances of successful resuscitation beyond that threshold.
I had to stop to make this a 2.2 because I'm a very visual person and a descriptive person. So when someone starts to like define something to the T of how a person looks after going into the vacuum of space, I start describing my guts and everything inside of me start to just and especially after you eat something. Sorry, viewers, if you just got done eating something, it may make you feel a little sick. It may make you feel sick in the stomach that you might want to puke, and I'm sorry for the people that are about to puke. But that was a descriptive, scary little podcast there about what happens. Okay, yeah, that got my nerves bad. But yeah, that was the part 1 of the Forever experiments, and I feel like my friend Elise here just looks just as disgusted as I am. So that was a very can't even speak. Makes you want to puke. But that was part 1, and part 2 should be coming up any soon, later in the week, possibly. But thank you guys for joining in for this video, and I hope whatever you're doing and wherever you're at the moment, at your job, sitting in your car before you clock into your job, at school when you're bored and you're tired of listening to the teachers, so you're watching this podcast, anywhere you are, and you got your earbuds in and you're listening, I hope you have joined this podcast, and I hope you haven't puked. Squid slap with me if you did not puke. Good job. Look, she's even willing to do it. I got a friend on here that's actually slapped her face. The other 2 haven't slapped their faces, but she's fine because they just looked at me whenever I did it like, what? What are you doing? Some people don't understand that this is my outro. This is how I outro every video, guys. I do a little slap on the face. And also slap if you've liked the video, if you've commented, if you subscribe to my channel, don't forget to pet the bell notifications. Ding! Just like Taco Bell, and I do love Taco Bell. Ding! Thank you guys for checking out this episode, and thank you, Elise, for being here today. And I will see you possibly in the second part. I hope it doesn't get as disgusting as it was at the end, but I'll see you in the second part, and we'll see where this guy goes with his story. It seems very intriguing to want to know what happens next. We got a far little way to go with it, so we will see. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Screeching Squid 3G.